My mom knows what ChatGPT is. She does not know what Gemini is. She doesn't know what a Claude is. She doesn't know what Claude's skills are. What I want to talk about here is a few predictions I have this year, starting with why OpenAI will die in 2026. And then I have three other predictions that, depending on how you look at it, could be considered dark predictions, but I actually see some opportunity here. But let's start with OpenAI. So think back to like 2022, 2023-ish when OpenAI exploded on the scene. They literally held and still hold the Kleenex of AIs. Kleenex is just tissue paper, but we say Kleenex almost as a substitute for tissue paper. That's what OpenAI is and ChatGPT is for AI right now. Most people just think of AI and they think of the GPT line of products. There's a problem though. So OpenAI started out because they had the best model. ChatGPT was leagues ahead of everything else. If you remember the release of Bard just a few years ago by Google, it was total garbage. But all that's changed. They let everyone else catch up with them while there was some kind of shenanigans going on at the company. So now, Google has entered the market with Gemini and they have their entire distribution network that they can plug Gemini into. That's the most used model out there right now is Gemini 3, not ChatGPT, or just their Gemini line in general. Anthropic's cornering the coding market. And the reason that's important is because people like us that use AI for coding are power users. Per token, we are the most valuable people in the world to target. And OpenAI has completely lost that. This leaves OpenAI in a position to where they had the strongest model, but all these other competitors and even people coming in from China, look what just happened with the DeepSeek release a while back. And then there's two more models that just came out, which we'll do a show on from China that are on par with OpenAI. So OpenAI has gone from market leader, the best models, to just another run-of-the-mill model, not even the top, not even a specialist model for anyone. And what they've started trying to do is become a product company. So AI in the future, even more so than now, is literally just going to become a commodity. It's going to be like electricity. You're not going to need the latest and greatest model for everything. You only need that for certain things. Models are going to become more specialized, and OpenAI has completely dropped the ball in this category. Everyone's caught up to them, and now they're in the hardest spot possible. They are competing with people like you and me. I know it doesn't seem like that right now, but think about what apps like Cursor are. Cursor, and this is a derogatory term, is essentially an AI wrapper, even though they're developing their own models now. And this is who OpenAI is competing with. Look at what they've started releasing. They've started releasing Codex, which I use Codex in these coding tools all the time. Codex 5.2 is just not up to par, not with Opus 4.5 or even Sonnet from Anthropic. It's not up to par with Gemini. It's just not. And now they have gone from owning the AI space to competing in places like IDEs and Codex. They're making Atlas. You remember the browser they came out with? How many people are using Atlas? I don't know of anybody. So now they are moving into the highly competitive market space of competing against other small companies and individuals on who's building the best product. And that's something that they are just not architected for. If you look at the products that they've built so far, they're kind of all half-assed prototypes, in my opinion. I don't see how somebody can have billions of dollars in funding and produce some of the prototypes apps that they've produced. What that points to me, or what that shows me, is internally there's a lot of misalignment in what their company's mission actually is. Is it to build the best model? Or is it to, hey, we have some pretty cool models and now we're going to start building dozens of different products? I don't see how that works. In the mass market, they are competing with folks like Google, who not only have years and years of experience with search, they have a huge distribution network, and they're going to start making their own chips, or I think they've already started. So they have the whole vertical, you know, covered, while OpenAI, what do they have? So I think in 2026, you're going to start seeing the downfall of OpenAI in general. You can even see that, Microsoft, their partner, is adding in Claude and stuff to their stack where people can have that. Doesn't sound like a very good partnership for me. So how can you benefit from this? You can't really. It's not, I mean, financially, it's not a public company yet. And I bet you anything they're going to try to go public and get a boost off of the, name recognition of ChatGPT and OpenAI. And then you'll see maybe a little boost in that stock price and then it'll fail. So that's my prediction. I don't know if that IPO will happen in 2026, but I think by the end of 2026, you're just not going to talk about OpenAI that much anymore. So on to the next prediction. And this one is, I think we're going to enter the era of disposable software. I literally just got off of a phone call with my dad, and he's looking to buy a second home because he's a baby boomer, and that's what baby boomers do. And he's looking at houses in Florida, and he's sitting down in front of Microsoft Excel, of course, and he's trying to make these huge, elaborate spreadsheets with the details about different houses and the trade-offs between them, and then what the opportunity cost of that is versus just investing money in a index fund or a collection of stocks. And this is driving me nuts when I'm listening to him talk, because all I'm thinking is you could have a little piece of software that you built before you went to look at these houses that would do this for you, and you could do that with minimal effort. Except people like my dad and the general public are still very scared of building apps. They think it's something very complicated, and it definitely can still be complicated, as we all know. I wade my way through bugs all day, every day. But there's no way that you can convince me that there can't be a vibe coding type app where he could explain his problem and have a wizard walk him through his problem, and it would just spit out an app for him and give him a temporary URL and have him use that app while he's down there looking at houses, and that would be the app. So I think one way or another, if it's through some different type of app store or something that's very readily accessible to the general public, you're going to start seeing an avenue form for disposable apps being built for the general public. I have some more thoughts on this, and I'll probably do a show on it later. But this brings me on to my third prediction, which is we will start seeing the rise of generative UI. So if you've been following the show, you know right now one of the apps I'm building is my media app to help me build these shows, because I just started YouTube and I'm not great at building these shows yet, and it takes me forever. So I've built this app, and essentially it's just a database. It's a way for me to collect ideas and to kind of run them through different phases of research, to apply some of my pre-formats to them to help me with the titles and whatnot like that. And it's essentially just a database. I'm spending my time building a huge dashboard in this elaborate system, and I'm using a bunch of pre-packaged patterns of dashboards that I've built hundreds of times before, just like everyone else is. And my question is, why? Why does the workflow look like this? When you go to the URL for my app in the future, here's what I see happening. You have access to my database, and you have some access to some proprietary business logic that exists inside of my app. Pretty much you have the back end of my app. And you might have a plugin, or there might be some different type of browser, and it knows the dashboard stylings you want. It knows how you like to navigate through things. It knows the different types of flows you like. And all that web browser or plugin is doing is applying kind of your conditions on top of my core logic in my database and just giving you the experience that you want. So it takes me as the app developer away from building UIs, and there's going to be these generative UIs that are just smart enough to know what to build. I'm going to look into building one of these this year. I haven't quite got it down, but I think I could build a plugin that would be real janky at first, but it could do something like this. If you're going to build something like this, let me know. I'd love to talk about it with you. But yeah, I think these generative UI experiences, you're going to start seeing avenues for those pop up in 2026. So get ahead of it. On testandprod.co, I'll be sharing tools and stuff that I'm looking at that will do this stuff right now. The network effect is a really big deal here. If you have just like one-off little packages that do this, or apps that do this that people can install, it needs to hit a certain level of saturation in the market before it becomes ubiquitous and becomes a true platform. Then you're going to have app builders building databases and core logic. Then you're just going to have the generative UI browser. Man, if I was Google, this is something I would be building that plugs in and just generates the UI for you right in the browser. This will eventually lead to apps disappearing at all, but that's not in 2026. That's after that, I think. Which brings me on to my fourth and final prediction, which is kind of the death of the code writer. This might sound strange coming from someone like me who has a channel where I share all the apps I'm building, but I'm really not writing code much at all anymore. If you've seen my Conductor Framework that I showed you yesterday, which you can get for free at testandprod.com, I'm managing context. I'm managing workflows. I'm managing code reviews. I'm managing pull requests. I'm managing agents. Okay. And there's kind of a myth, and you'll see kind of a mix here, especially on YouTube, between people that grew up coding the old way and are great at coding versus people more like me who are amateur coders who are building apps with AI first. And it's that code needs to be beautiful. And that's an absolute lie. I've worked at so many companies and we've shipped products, at unicorn companies. And I can tell you for a fact, the code has been messy, tangled, hot garbage over half the time. And it's okay if your code is hot garbage. And it's okay if your app that only has 200 users and, a manageable code base isn't perfect. AI is going to get it where it is perfect, very soon, within a year or two, is my prediction there. But you're going to see the death of the code writer, especially in companies, and you're going to see the rise of the code reviewer who will use a mix of tools. So this code reviewer role that I see emerging is kind of like a mix of a QA role, a developer role, and a product manager role. And they are the people who are making sure everything's right, using code review tools and workflow tools to verify workflows. It's gonna be like a super QA type stuff that can submit and pull change code and make its own pull requests, paired with a person who's just doing tons of code reviews. And that's about it. I will have more of these. Have a happy Christmas, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.